Hi, my name is Ashley Mintz, and I'm an artist in Nashville, Tennessee. And as a member of the Tennessee Craft Mid-State Chapter, I am making this video with funding provided by the Mid-State Micro Grant for Craft Content. And in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to make a simple mixed media painting and also what I like to call art cards, which are basically small paintings on like thick paper, mixed media paper, or like watercolor paper. And then over the painting, I like to add words, so it could be song lyrics or poetry. And I usually alternate between the two, so that's what I'll be doing in this video. So hopefully you can keep up, and let's get started. So I just wanted to start off by showing a few pieces of my own work, and it's kind of what I'll be demonstrating in the video. So I'm starting here with two small cards where just the background is finished, and then this is a finished piece where it's just a simple background, and then I've added words from a poem that I wrote. So I usually do the background first and then add on the words with either ink or paint. And then coming up, I've got some bigger pieces that are actually on canvas, and I've used a lot of different mixed media pieces like twine and even buttons and pieces of paper and lace. And then there's also parts from pages of books that I've used, and then more twine, a lot of twine. And then I just add on the words using either paint or marker. And I really love acrylic markers. It's like acrylic paint markers. Those work really, really well. So those were just some examples of my work, and it's similar to what I'll be demonstrating, and now it's time to paint. And what you'll need is some paper for a surface, and you'll want either of these kinds of paper that are kind of thick, acrylic paints, paint brushes, any size, markers. I like to use chalkboard markers, permanent markers, or acrylic paint markers. I like to use gloss medium or glue, so I like to have both on hand. You'll need scissors, mixed media pieces, which could be lace or tissue paper or any little pieces of paper that have designs on them, and then of course paper towels, a cup of water, and a palette for paint. Now personally, for a palette, I like to use paper plates or styrofoam plates. They hold paint pretty well. Sometimes the paper plates, you might have to double up on them, but I really like using plates because you could get a lot in a pack. And then there's a lot of space to put a lot of paint. So here I've got a piece of Bristol paper. It's the smaller paper. And then the cardstock paper is the black paper. Usually I wouldn't use cardstock, but I found some really thick pieces of cardstock that I had, and I decided that it would be cool to use it just because the black paper will make the bright paint that I'm going to be using pop out more. And then these are mixed media pieces, so there's some lace, there's just some random cut pieces of paper in different shapes and stuff that I'm going to be using. And then this is just regular printer paper, and what I like to use this for is I'll put paint on this printer paper, and then I'll apply it on the actual painting, so it gives it kind of a printmaking look, and it kind of is like stamping. So I'll show you what I mean here. So I'm gonna take this turquoise color from my styrofoam plate that's obviously been used a lot in the last few days, and I'm just gonna put it generously on the piece of printer paper. You don't want it too thick, but you don't want it too thin, so it dries easily. And then I'm just gonna pick a few spots. I'm gonna put it paint side down on the paper, and then I'm just gonna press down really hard. I'm gonna pull it back, and then I'm gonna do the same thing in a few other spots. And so what I'm thinking of doing is a house, and so this will be like the sky or the clouds. And then I'm gonna take the card, which is the Bristol paper. I'm gonna be doing the little art card on this piece of paper. I'm just gonna take this, it's like a translucent orange color, and I'm actually going to have it as the background on the card, but I'm also gonna add some of this paint to the painting on the cardstock paper. Now it's not gonna show through a whole lot because it's kind of translucent, and because of the black paper, since it's so dark, it's not really gonna show as much. But when I put a color over the orange, it should kind of shine through. And I'm gonna let that dry a little bit. I'm gonna grab this piece of paper again, and I'm gonna add a different color. I'm gonna put some green, and I'm gonna do the same technique, which is like stamping. I'm just gonna go on the bottom this time, and it's gonna be like grass. So I'm going over the orange parts, and then all across the bottom. And then this is actually how I get my mixed media paper, is I'll reuse the paper that I'm using to apply the paint to the cardstock. I'll just cut that up and reuse it. So now I'm adding a second layer on the card, and then I'm gonna do a technique where I splatter some water over the paint. And then I'm gonna let that dry for about 1 minute. And then while that's kind of drying, I'm going to come back to the painting. And now I'm just gonna add some yellow in between the spaces where the cloud or the sky is, so it kind of looks like the sun shining through. So I'm just randomly picking spots to place it. And then I'm actually gonna splatter some water on this painting too. Now it might not show as much as what you'll see on the card just because of the black background, but it's gonna add like some textures. So now I'm gonna take another piece of paper that I obviously used to put paint on, another painting, and I'm gonna flip this over onto the card, onto the water splatters, and I'm gonna press down really hard, and you're gonna see the water moving around underneath, and that's okay. And then you're gonna slowly pull it back, and it kind of gives this really cool look. So I'm gonna hold on to that piece of paper and use it later on for the painting on the cardstock, but it kind of looks like bubbles. I really like the way that that looks on the card. And then I'm just gonna fill in the edges. I purposely left those edges because I thought it would look cool to put a different color on the edges, and I'm kind of going into the turquoise part because it kind of gives it a cool look. It looks darker where the pink and the turquoise edges meet. So now you can see on the painting the little spots kind of show, but it's more for texture purposes that I put the water on the painting. And then we're going to come back to the painting now while the card dries. And you can see I'm alternating a lot, and this is usually how I work when I'm painting. It's hard for me to just focus on one painting at a time. So now I'm just cutting the pieces of paper that I used to pull away the paint from the other parts, from the card and from the painting. And then I'm just going to try to find where it would be nice to put a house. And then I'm using my Liquitex gloss varnish. Sometimes I'll use what's called gloss medium. It's kind of similar, it's just the thicknesses are kind of different. But I love using this as an adhesive as opposed to glue, especially if I'm using smaller pieces of paper and like thin pieces of paper to add to paintings, because you don't really need a whole lot to hold it down. And these are really thin pieces of paper. It's just printer paper with paint on them. So this gloss medium or the gloss varnish is going to hold it down really well. And then I'm just taking another piece of mixed media paper, adding a door, and I put the door a little lower. I like for it to look uneven. And then I've got all these other little pieces that I want to make into a roof, but I'm gonna add a little more to make the house bigger. And then I'm gonna start adding pieces for the roof using the gloss varnish. And then right now I'm just filling in different parts and picking random pieces of paper. And the roof is not going to be like perfectly straight, but I kind of like for it to look like that. And I'm just adding some pieces for texture and to add to the color. I've got a piece of lace, and then another piece of lace here that I actually painted. So I'm just kind of filling it in, kind of like a puzzle, just seeing what fits where. And then I'm actually going to add a little bit of paint because it gives it a different texture. Like some parts are going to be thicker than other parts, and that really kind of gives it character, it being a mixed media painting. So I'm just kind of filling in some spaces here, and then I'm going to add a little red doorknob. And then I'm going to set that aside again. But first I'm going to wipe off any extra or overly thick paint or gloss varnish. That way it doesn't take as long to dry. And then I'm going to get the card, which should be dry by now. And then I'm going to start adding words to it. And I'm going to be using these chalkboard markers. And here's some examples of the cards that I'm doing. So I'll do a background and then I'll use markers. I've also got, this is a painter's marker, it's acrylic paint, and then these are chalkboard markers. So I usually try to keep different kind of markers around, and then I just add on to the cards. I write words. It could be song lyrics or poetry. And what I'm writing right now is actually a part of song lyrics that I've written. And then I also added little circles in random places. But I think these are really cute cards, and I actually started making them because I was using like pieces of paper like this to add stuff to like bigger paintings, and then I thought that the cards themselves looked cool, and I thought it would be fun to just add words and then have them as cards. So I'm doing this just randomly. This is just on a little piece of paper, but I like doing stuff like that, just kind of not really letting paper go to waste. So I'm gonna go back to the painting here, and I'm gonna use a stencil to put the word home. And I'm using this acrylic paint marker again. It's a lot easier. You can see that I've used this stencil a lot. There's paint all over it. But the marker is really a lot easier to use because you have more control over it, whereas paint, it can kind of spread out more and maybe kind of make the letters look weird. And I like the font of the letters, but I did want to fill some of them in. And then I'm going to take the chalkboard marker in red, and I'm going to write some words on the other side. And you can see that the red is kind of hard to see because of the black background, so I'm going to try to go over it with a different color. I'm trying with blue now. And as you can see, the same thing is happening. So you just have to kind of test things out. And what I'm going to do now, since it is hard to see it, you have to look really close to see it, is I'm going to take that white marker, the acrylic paint marker again, and I'm going to go over it. And then you really can see it now. And one of the reasons it pops out so much is because the red and the blue are in the background. So it's always fun to test things out and try to layer things as well. And so now I'm just outlining the house with the white paint marker. It kind of makes the bright colors pop out more, to have the white outline just kind of in random places. I'm just like spreading it. And then I'm adding like little dots. It could be considered stars or snow. And I think that I'm finished. I'm gonna let this dry. But this is a finished product. It's just really simple little painting. But this is how I like to work. I love doing abstract and mixed media art. So I hope that you were able to create something fun. And these are the finished products up close. And I really enjoyed doing this video. and thank you for following along. Here is where you can find more of my work on my website and also my blog.